Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of The Upside, the show where we go deep with founders and investors building the future of emerging markets. I'm Tage Kene-Okafor, your host for today, and today's guest is one of the most interesting founders building in one of the most misunderstood markets industries globally, the used car space. I'm joined by Omar, co-founder and CEO of Sylndr, Egypt's leading used car platform. Now, why is this interesting? Well, Egypt has over 6 million vehicles on its roads. Most of them are used cars, yet buying and selling a car remains broken and informal. Since founding Sylndr in 2021, Omar has raised over $28 million, including one of MENA's largest pre-seed rounds, and recently announced a $15.7 million Series A, backed by the likes of DPIs, Nclude Fund, Algebra Ventures, and others. Welcome, Omar, to the show.
Hey, how are you? Thank you. Thank you for having me. I can you perfectly.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. And I know the last time we spoke was back in 2022 when
Long
Sylndr
time.
raised. Yeah, it's been a minute. But first, before we get into the raise of the fundraise and other financial details, right? Before you started Sylndr, right, you were an investment banker and you worked as a CFO at Elmenis,
Yeah.
a food discovery platform. Now, how do you end up running a
Used cars
used car
business.
platform in Egypt?
Look, honestly, if I look back at my career development, I would say it's a big part of it is luck. Luck, to be completely honest. I think one opportunity led to another. I think since graduating from university, and I wasn't the A student type at all, but I think I was mostly thirsty for learning, knowledge, building my own knowledge. So learned a lot in banking. I think it's one of the most important parts of my career that led me to shape my, let's say, professional knowledge and know-how. And then moving to menus was another move into understanding startups, early stage companies, technology, and it was a crash course into everything that is tech related. And then after spending some time in the menus, I thought that it's a good time to think of something new. And I couldn't say I can definitely say that I wasn't a kid who used to play with Legos, at least car Legos. That moved me into building a car business. But one of the things that I've learned in banking is spotting massive markets, understanding shareholder value creation, understanding what makes businesses different from a shareholder's perspective. And the more I used to research markets globally and look at industries where scalability was key, profitability was achieved, and the macroeconomics of those markets were similar to Egypt. This is where the used car market came quite clear that this is a massive opportunity in Egypt that no one is yet tackling it structurally.
And I mean, stumbling on this, will I say, opportunity, what would you say were the two or three most important assumptions needed to prove, right, in the first couple of months when went after the opportunity?
I think there were a couple of points to think of. One, are buyers and sellers willing to digitize their experience, and that was one. So are buyers willing to look at cars online, do their booking online, come and see us, and do most of their experience online? Same thing with sellers, staying at home, getting into a website, putting some details on your car, and then a team come to your place and give you a price at home. And I think that was clear that the market was really looking for something like that, and that gives that experience. I think the second point was, are we able to challenge the status quo? Because buying and selling cars, it's embedded that in the Egyptian experience, at least that haggle is the most important aspect of it, whether you're buying or selling.
Yeah.
That was our motto from day one. We don't haggle at buy, we don't haggle at sell. And that was really our Egyptians going to absorb that. And I think that is something that we've been able to prove to ourselves, both on the buying and selling part. And I would say the third point is there enough spread and margin in that market that would make that business economically profitable? And I think that became quite clear that, yeah, there is a good margin. Not that we're extracting a significant margin from trade, but if you look at the full value chain of mobility, there's 100% big margin to extract. So I would say these were the most important things to test at first.
Would you say I mean, before Selena came to the scene, the process of buying used cars was like completely broken? I mean, you talked about like haggling prices, for instance, right? It starts that I think we used while covering the pre-seed was used cars outnumber new cars 3-1, right? So why, first of all, why is that the case? And also, what was so broken in the system that you had to kind of fix digitally?
Look, يعني If you look at the core of the 3 to 1, it simply reflects affordability, in my view. One, affordability, especially in a market where car prices are more or less dollar pegged, because still, I know that there's a significant shift in the market, but still a big portion of new cars in Egypt are imported. And in a market, and I know that you face similar volatilities, but in markets where we
Yeah.
see currency devaluation happening a couple of times, that impacts the affordability. So I would say one, affordability is key, and this is why people would tend to move towards more affordable solutions. The second point I would say is the lack of high quality cars, especially on the used cars bit. So again, if you travel abroad, you would always see the big OEMs selling certified used cars. But in Egypt, that's not the case. So if a customer wants to buy an affordable car, finding a high quality one becomes a challenge. I would say the other part is that there isn't a single shop or a player that is giving to customers the full ecosystem experience of buying, selling, financing, the servicing, and the insurance. So you always have to do everything on your own, and you have to do every single part with a completely different player. So no one gives you that full experience end to end. I would say that these were the main characteristics that we've seen in the Egyptian market, where we believe that are the points that needs to be tackled, and what we believe is a bit broken in the market.
You mentioned buying and selling before like financing and other parts. I mean, and that's what Sylndr started with, a marketplace, right? How did you build, trust among the buyers and the sellers, right? So how did you navigate that?
I would say we're still navigating that, because trust isn't something that is built overnight. It's earned.
Yeah.
This is something that you have to keep earning with your customers. I think from our side, we were focused on keeping our promises to customers. So focusing on keeping the 7 days money back guarantee, the warranty guarantee, giving full transparency to customers, making sure that they're happy. Whenever there's any issue with their transaction, they feel that they're working with a safe partner. And so I think keeping those promises are what is helping us build that trust into the market. And also from the other part is that from a dealer's aspect, because we do a lot of work with dealers as well, and we've realized that we're shaping that trust in the proper space, is when dealers are actually coming to us and asking us if they can list their own cars on Sylndr's website. And when we try to ask them why, they said because customers now can trust Sylndr. Customers believe that Sylndr, at the end, if they give them something, they will be able to believe that this is the right product, or it's in full transparency. So I think focusing on the promise, I hope that we can keep building that promise with customers as we go.
Still talking about the marketplace, right? Can you walk me through the, full Sylndr experience, right? And what channels you use to drive demand and supply, right? So do you have like, on the ground agents that went to these dealers shop by shop, right, to sign them on board? What kind of promises were made to them? And for customers, you talked about the 7 day, I think warranty,
Yeah.
7, right? So it's like,
Yeah.
okay, how's the feedback around that to drive skill first couple of years?
The 7 days is a money back. So just to make
Mhm.
it clear, the warranty is a 90 days warranty, and hopefully
Okay.
we're trying to work to expanding that warranty beyond the year. But 7 days is a money back guarantee. From an experience standpoint, from a customer standpoint, is that our focus has been hassle free, is give customers an hassle free experience. So you're at home, you would sell the car, everything is done by professionals. We would inspect it, give you a price, and if you're happy, we would go with it. From a buying aspect, is that you're sitting at home, you have a full inventory to look at. You look at the cars in details, every single imperfection of it. And if you're happy with the car, then you would come to check it out and buy it. And then we would now handle the full financing experience as well. So the latest brand that we've launched with it, which is Sylndr Swift, is that we give you instant financing approval in our showroom, or even if you're staying at home. So it was primarily focusing on experience, is how to give customers a very seamless experience from a consumer standpoint. From a dealer standpoint, I think because dealers have a completely different challenge. If you look at the dynamics of the Egyptian market from a dealer perspective, most of them are unbanked, small businesses. They don't have a big inventory, and they're primarily focused on solving everything by themselves, and they don't have any digitization in their experience, and they're limited in capital, they're limited in inventory. So again, focusing on dealers on how to support them and how to become an enabler for them, and how to make sure that they can scale efficiently and expand their inventory, and how they can connect to customers more efficiently. I think that has been the key selling points to dealers. And one of the things that hopefully by the time the podcast comes out is that we're launching a new marketplace where dealers can list cars directly to consumers, and then Sylndr would be in the middle just to give consumers the comfort that these dealers have been verified. Sylndr can do the inspection on your behalf. Sylndr can become an escrow in the middle and handle the full payment between you and the dealers. Sylndr with the ownership transfer. So focusing on, again, giving customers the trust that they can buy a car from a dealer without feeling that they're going to be ripped in the middle. And at the same time, giving dealers the tools that allows them to expand their selling channel beyond their offline capabilities.
Isn't it kind of like competitive for, I mean, how do I frame this question? So you're giving the dealers the chance to digitize their process, the selling of their cars, right? Isn't that competing with what you have already, right? How do you manage that? Because I feel it's going to drive traffic away from Sylndr, right? To, I mean, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but yeah, how does that work?
Look, one, on the competition part, I honestly don't think it's a competition. I think, as I said, and dealers always thought that as well, the market in Egypt is massive. It's not a market where a single player is going to own it. It's a market where actually dealers and businesses need to work together in order to lift that market together. So dealers never thought of us as a competition. Mind you that the product that we're giving to customers is completely different from the product that dealers give, because Sylndr cars are fully refurbished. They come with warranty. The price is inclusive of taxes, ownership transfer, the full refurbishment that has been done, the servicing, and there is no one else in the market gives that unique product. Dealers and the majority of the products in the market are businesses that directly buy and sell, trade. They don't get into the value added aspect of the car. So from a competition standpoint, I don't think we're competing. I think we're complementing each other, because we would buy from them, they would buy from us. We would help them in a lot of things that we're doing. A lot of the infrastructure that we've built, either operational infrastructure or technology infrastructure, dealers rely on today in order to scale their business. So they see us as a partner that wants them to scale and become bigger in the market. From a traffic standpoint, I get your perspective, but honestly, I don't look at any, I've never looked at it whether this is going to take off from Sylndr's traffic or not. I think if that gives us the ability to serve more customers, then we've been able to achieve the right mission. Whether we do it directly by ourselves through our own car, or we actually do it through a dealer's car and focus on the services that we provide, the more customers we serve, the more we're heading into the right track. It doesn't matter whether we're the ones selling the car or not. And in reality, it will become unrealistic to think that we can serve the whole market with used cars. It's a significant operational infrastructure that we have to build. So we have to think of how to partner with other players in the market in order to be able to serve the big market or the biggest customer base that we can serve.
So with a dealer, right, what services do you offer them out of the Sylndr service? You talked about, having like an escrow wallet and being the intermediary between the dealer and the buyer, right? So how does that play out?
From the dealer perspective, dealers can take supply from us. We give them instant supply to buy from. Again, you have to think of a dealer with 5 to 10 cars in his showroom. He can only view a couple of cars in the day to buy. It takes a lot of time and effort to look at the market, get the exact cars that he's looking at. So when we do that, we give them instant supply to buy from, of cars that are fully inspected, even without the refurbishment. We give them tools that would allow them to expand their inventory beyond what they have. So they can actually have, instead of having only 5 cars in their showroom, they can have 10, 15 cars in the showroom relying on Sylndr services. So we try to expand their services as we can. Dealers now can actually use that platform that we give them and list cars directly to consumers and sell cars directly to consumers. And then there is a lot of solutions that we're focusing on building that makes the dealer's operation becomes much more seamless. So part of that marketplace is giving them CRM tools that will help them tag their customers, communicate with their customers, and keep their customers in a continuous relationship. How to let them manage their inventory efficiently and make sure that they track the inventory in the right manner. Payments, how to make sure that they can do their payments seamlessly, can transact with customers seamlessly, and all of that. So this is how we're focusing, or this is what we're trying to do is to dealers, is that we want to become their kitchen. We want to become the partner that gives them every single solution that will help them scale and serve the more customers. And I think that's one of the key things that evolved at during the times of Sylndr. And funny enough that the mission still stands the same, even with our dealer aspect, is that our mission has always been to enable consumers to buy, sell, finance, and service their car in a completely transparent and reliable manner. we're still keeping on delivering that message through dealers as well. Because if you help dealers do all of that, you expand or enhance the customer experience as well. The more you help dealers, the more you help customers at the end. The more you give them transparency, the more they will become transparent with the customer. The more you give them options, the more that they're going to give options to the customers as well. So focusing on dealers in order to build on our mission to customers is our focus.
You talked about financing, right? So after buy, sell, finance, how what's the process like for within the Sylndr ecosystem, right? And also Sylndr's marketplace and the digital process that you've enabled for the dealers outside of the marketplace. So as a customer, for instance, do I get money from Sylndr? If I buy a car, can I pay in installments, right, from Sylndr's website, or with the dealers? Do I have that option to do that across the board?
So when we first started, we were focused on the financing bit from start, and we've been able to partner with local banks and NBFIs. I think Sylndr played a significant role when we started letting the banking sector trust the used cars market segment again, and I think we've been able to do that. Recently, what we've launched is Swift, Sylndr Swift, which is our financing platform. We don't underwrite, so we don't underwrite customers directly. But we do is that we try to give customers all of the financing solution that they need. So let me walk you through the experience. As a customer, let's say you come into the Sylndr app and check a car. If you want to finance it instantly while you're on the app, we would collect some information, and depending on that info, we would tell you whether you're accepted or not from a financing standpoint. And that process happens in less than 10 minutes because we've partnered with solid MBFI platform in Egypt that has a very digitized credit scoring that would give that instant approval. In reality, what happens at the back end is that we have a couple of lenders and a couple of underwriters being MBFIs and banks. So what happens is, depending on the customer profile, we would match that profile with the dealers with the bank. And this is what we're focusing on doing, is that the more pricing and the more solutions that we give to customers, the better. From the front end aspect, is that, and this is what we do as Sylndr, is that we focus on products and solutions. Now you can buy a Sylndr car through financing. You can buy a car from a dealer through Sylndr's financing platform. You can buy a car from your friend, and Sylndr would do that financing for you as well. You can come and turn your car into an equity. You're going to hear very soon of new products that have been launched for the first time in Egypt from a mobility standpoint. So financing sits at the heart of what we're doing, because every single mobility product, name it, whether fleet management, car rental, any leasing, all of these are built on top of financing products. So financing sits at the core of what we do. And our focus is that how to utilize proper financing structures and solutions to help customers make car purchase more affordable, and help with the market innovation, both from a consumer and from a lender standpoint, because lenders are as well limited with their solutions, because they don't want to own cars, they don't want to buy cars, they don't want to have a car as a collateral. And this is why our value add comes in the middle, is that we would focus on building products that would help lenders and customers get connected, and we would be in the middle, making sure that this is actually even a possibility. And this is why Swift is a core of in the middle of what we're trying to build.
So you're saying Swift is the, will I say, formalized version of the financing? Because you mentioned, financing has always been a part of Sylndr's, marketplace. But launching Swift is just, making it more robust and building a structure around it. Is that what it means?
100%, 100%. If
Okay.
honestly, if the way that I always look at it is that mobility is built on top of three important pillars, which is inventory, which is buying and selling, financing, and servicing. If you have that infrastructure built, this is where it gives you the ability to create every single product. So the focus that we've been doing in the last 2 to 3 years in Egypt is focusing on building that infrastructure. Now is the time where we would capitalize on that infrastructure and keep on building products that avails every single experience, product innovation, whether to a customer or a dealer or even a business. So financing is 100% at the core of what we're doing, and we've been focusing from day one, is that this is something that we're going to do, but we need to focus on how to build it properly and how to build that infrastructure in a much efficient manner.
So if I understand like how, Sylndr makes money, it's across financing options, services, which we haven't talked about yet, the marketplace and the digitized platform for the dealers, right? What's the main, or will I say the main revenue generator for Sylndr at this time, and how do you see that changing over the coming years?
Look, to be completely honest, I think in the past couple of years, trade has been at the core of our revenue and margin extraction, being it either on the consumer side or on the dealer side. But I think, as mentioned, the more we shift into a full supply chain business that is serving every single every single part of the market, whether a consumer, a business, a dealer, and whether we're doing that through trade, financing, servicing, insurance, name it, this expands our ability to extract margin. So instead of focusing on on generating or extracting significant margin from a single part, is actually how to think to diversify that generation and extraction from a couple of businesses. So again, we're trying to focus on building a full ecosystem. And once you're able to build that ecosystem efficiently, this is where you're able to extract margins efficiently as well. It has been trade, but now it's evolving into beyond trade, into financing, servicing, and others.
The services parts, that's where the repairs and all that comes in. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And this is
How is
something
that
that
business?
we just launched it, I think, 1 week ago.
Okay, so it's pretty young, yeah.
2025, I would say, is the year of product launches for us.
Okay.
So it's still recently launched. It's something that we're quite excited about. Again, we're focusing on customers. We were focusing on customers that bought cars from Sylndr and want to service it and get a very seamless experience. And then it complements what we're doing between financing and other products that we're going to launch in the future. So again, servicing plays a very important part for us as well.
Okay. Let's talk about, fundraising and investors, whatnot. So in 2022, Sylndr raised a 12.6 million,
Yeah,
you say? And this was at a time where the company was pre-revenue. I mean, talk about,
good old days.
the good old days. What was the narrative, right, that got investors to back you at that stage, especially since you didn't have, experience selling cars, right? Coming from the food delivery business into that.
Luck plays a big part of it. I think there's a very known Egyptian billionaire that said 70 to 80% of anyone's career is luck, and 100% believe in that. So luck plays a significant role. I think back in 2022, we were extremely lucky with our timing on when we closed our round. Market had significant proper liquidity. A lot of investors were putting decent cash and investments across sectors, businesses, markets. But honestly, the other part from our side on the narrative is that we had a rock solid founding team, and I think we still have a very solid team till date, and that played us an important role because at the start, investors, the first thing that they look at, who are the team members that they're going to invest in, because these are the people that they're going to give them their cash, and whether these people are able to do what they're doing or not. The good thing that I had personally is my financial acumen, given my investment banking background, which plays an important key in building a very complex balance sheet structured business, and where solid economics are key. So that was one. The other part is that, again, it's a massive market in Egypt, multi-billion-dollar market. No one is looking at it. No one is building any structured product around it. So investors can see that it's a big market. It's a big opportunity. There is a good team. And of course, liquidity at that point in time was good. So raising that capital, raising that amount was primarily driven by these factors as well.
Okay. And now, you've gone on to close under 15, which I understand is, across two tranches, seed and series A, right? You've done that in a down market. I mean, we've been in a down market for like 3 years now.
I think we've been in a down market since our 12.6 million. So it's always been a down market.
So what did you have to do differently this time? Obviously, this is in lock, right? So, in terms of the traction revenue, to get this round over the line.
Look, one, I think, the likes of an investor like DPI, who looks properly at economics and businesses and whether a business is really efficient or not, I think we've been focused on building the infrastructure, as I said. That was key, is one, our vision and strategy and how we want to build a full ecosystem around what we have, and our success to build that infrastructure in the last 2 to 3 years. Although it's a down market, although in a market like Egypt, we've seen significant volatility, being it currency, volumes, buying and selling, importation being locked on cars. So I think our ability to maneuver within that was key. Focusing on economics, and this is something that we've been very cautious on from day one, is that we're focusing on building healthy economics, a healthy business from a profitability standpoint. And this is something that we're hoping to reach during this year, has become a fully profitable company end to end, and showcasing to our investors our ability to execute. Because I recall back when we did the pre-seed, execution ability was always the point, is that this is a business with significant operational challenge. Will you guys be able to execute or not? That's the question. And I think now we're past that point. People or investors see that we have the ability to execute. They see the infrastructure that we've built. They see the financing aspect that we're looking to provide and how it plays a core role into the story that we're trying to build. So that honestly what helped us to reach that close.
Would you call DPI an international investor? Because I'm heading somewhere. I think they are, right? But they have some
It's a,
local.
yeah, it's a London-based private equity initially, but Africa has been in their core in the past years. They've been investing in Egypt. I recall back in the days of banking, DPRs were at that point in time a big private equity firm with the solid investments in Egypt. So, I would say
I mean,
they're African.
asking because of the Include fund, yeah, which is where the venture arm is, and
Yeah,
I think most of the deals from Include fund has been predominantly local, right?
Egypt.
But yeah, I can classify them as an international investor. The question I want to ask is, raising from local and international, right? What's the key difference in how this like VCs view the mobility opportunity in Egypt?
I think that from my perspective, I think the global investors or non-Egyptian investors, they've always been, let's say, energized by the parallels in other markets. So whether an opportunity or a business was successful or a certain product that has been successful in other markets. And I think that was the key, is that they can see that Egypt compared to any other market is yet under supported by any proper or decent products. And this is what made them see that there is a significant opportunity in a market like Egypt from a pure product opportunity standpoint. Like, for example, if you go into any global market, you would see a leasing product for cars. We still don't have leasing in Egypt. And this is an example of a product that has scaled significantly across the globe, but yet not available in the Egyptian market. Local investors on the other side, it's not a matter whether they've seen that in another market or not, but they're Egyptians. They understand how big of a market, they understand how this market is not being served. There is no one digitizing that experience. So they can see and feel the pain. They can feel the challenge, and they understand that there is someone or there is a business need that needs to come in and solve that problem inside the market. So it's a mix between understanding the local problem and knowledge, and between understanding the opportunities and successes that came from other markets, and how is this not yet tackled in a market like Egypt.
Well, for the local investors, do you also feel like maybe they have also seen other companies try and start something in the space and get burned? Right. I don't want to believe Sylndr is just the first platform ever to try this digitally, right? For, used cars. Do you think there are also learnings from maybe previous platforms that you're taking in, and also local investors are also taking into account while investing in or while backing Sylndr?
100%. I think it's not only on the investors. I think this exercise was done from our side as well. I think I recall before starting Sylndr and looking at the likes of Carvana, CarMax, Kavak. I've read more into failed mobility and automotive businesses rather than the ones that were successful, to understand how they failed and what make their business a losing one. So I think investors as well did that, and have learned as well, whether from a local or from a global aspect, the players that failed or the business models that failed, and whether and understand the reasons behind that. So I think 100% learning from failures and understanding what went right and what went wrong is a key aspect to deciding how you want to tackle a problem differently or look at it from a different angle.
And broadly speaking, what are some of those like mistakes or, that other previous platforms,
Did
made that Cylinder is trying not to like, make or trying to avoid such pitfalls?
one, supply. When you're operating in a market where you're buying and selling cars, where you're getting your supply is crucial. And this is, for example, a learning that we've seen from European businesses that failed versus European businesses that scaled efficiently. Because when you're buying cars from consumers directly, you're making sure that you're getting high quality used cars. While when you're buying cars from auction houses, wholesalers, and dealers, it's not always the case. So that your supply strategy is key. And this is why we've been focusing on building our direct consumer acquisition channel from start. And this is why almost 100% of the cars that we buy are primarily sourced from consumers. So that's key. Two is the technology that you're building and how you're making your technology So how you're utilizing technology and building an operationally efficient business. So again, this is one of the keys that we've been focusing on, is making sure that technology comes in every single of our operation, being it in the flow of the business, in pricing, in inspection, in refurbishment. We've been able to build every single aspect of that technology in-house. And that was core as well, because that makes you more efficient, that makes you more accurate, and that helps with your scalability much more. The third point, I wouldn't say it's a success or a failure, but because I don't think that one did it more successfully than the other. But it has always been, you start with a B2B business and then shift into a B2C, or start with a B2C and then shift into a B2B. So that's a learning from Auto1 in Europe, or from Carvana in the US, or from Kabak, or depending on the market. So we've always seen that start and shift, start and shift. And again, understanding that having the two-sided marketplace, each of them help the other. So when you have the B2B, it helps you build a more efficient B2C. And when you have a B2C, it helps you build a more efficient B2B. So building those together and balancing between both, I think, is a very important learning as well.
All right. And what about the finance aspect? Do you think it's a lever that will take Sylndr, or that takes the successful companies, right, to the next level versus the ones that fail?
I think if you look at any global business, any of the businesses that I mentioned, you would see that the financing is at the core of what they're doing. It all depends on how you're positioning or how you are trying to extract margin from it. So I think, and financing is at the core of what we're doing. Financing is a key element in how we build a more scalable and efficient business. The infrastructure, the operational infrastructure between buying, selling, servicing, and inspection will help scale that financing much more. The other reason why financing is core is that it creates affordability. You cannot create affordability without financing. And in a market like Egypt, where affordability is key, required, and people are hungry to buy cars but they cannot afford it, financing is the path. Financing is the way on. This is the way how you're going to provide that to customers, and what kind of innovative product that you're going to build to create that affordability. So financing is 100% at the core of what we're trying to do.
Still on financing, I mean, I understand, like you said, Sylndr doesn't, give out the loans, right? You don't underwrite. You don't underwrite either. You kind of connect with, those that do that. So the financial institutions, the banks, right? What's the like repayment rate, right, among your customer base? Do they default on those loans? And what happens if they do? Do you get the cars back and write off the loans, for instance?
I think we have the normal, let's say, security guarantee packages that we have like any other lender, and we make sure of that is actually happening. Whether if you default, whether we get a car, make sure that you pay and all of that. The good thing is that we don't have yet any defaults from a customer standpoint.
That's
But
interesting.
again, and you can say that I would say the most accurate ways to look at delinquencies post 12 months. We haven't reached yet a financing product with 12 months, so it's the normal case of business to see
Yeah.
delinquencies and NPLs is at a lower rate at the start. So it's not that we're super good; it's that we haven't yet tested that as
12 months, yeah.
we scaled. Yeah. But I'm sure that the level of assessment, credit assessment, and all of that we utilize is pretty strong. And in general, in auto loans in Egypt, the default rates aren't high. Mobility or car financing in general is a quite secured product from a lending standpoint. So I hopefully don't see any that being a challenge in the future.
Okay. Today you mentioned the used car market being $1 billion opportunity in Egypt. So there is an avenue for more players, right, to compete with Sylndr in the future. But right now, I mean, I don't know if there are similar platforms that have sprung up. I know 2 years or several years back, AutoCheck, a Nigerian version of this, acquired some company in Morocco, Egypt, but that could, for instance, be a competitor, right, in North Africa. But like, just looking at how the market is going to shape up in the next couple of years, how is Sylndr deal with competition and try to keep being a market leader in the space?
I genuinely believe that this is not a single player market. It's a big of a market, and it needs a couple of players. It cannot be sustained with a single player in it. And I always believe that competition will come in the market 100%. I would love to have a competition in the market, because that would help us together accelerate the experience that we're providing to customers and lift that market and expand that market for both of us. There have been some players in the market that were trying to do a single piece of the value chain that we're trying to do. I'm not sure how their successes were, to be completely honest. But as I said, I think it's a market that needs a couple of players. There is a room for honestly a handful of proper platforms that comes in. And as I said, competition only grows the pie. So that would ideally be the case for us. I think from our perspective, the way that we've been looking at it from day one is that we're focusing on the customers. So we're focusing on the experience. We're focusing on our vision. We want to serve as much customer as we can. We want to elevate the whole experience. If competition comes in and can help us do that, 100% is a great thing to do. We've been lucky with the amount of capital that we've been able to raise, because in a business like in a Sylndr, you need capital. You need proper capital from start to build that infrastructure. And I think, and this is also where the luck comes in. We closed our round, market downturn. So if there is another player that wants to come in the market and raise that amount of capital, it would be difficult. So that gives us a good head start. But again, we're focusing on infrastructure, building our know-how, serving the customer. But definitely, we're going to see players coming in Egypt.
I'm talking about like raising capital, and it just occurred to me that I never asked if Cylinder raised debt investment for a product like this. I think it's important to raise debt and working capital. So did that
Yeah.
happen?
Yeah, we did. We raised so far roughly $8-9 million of working capital.
Okay.
A big chunk of that working capital has been from local banks, and I think that was a great achievement. Is tapping into local lenders, tapping into banks supporting startups and funding startups was key. We've structured the first working capital asset-backed facility in Egypt because that wasn't even yet in the market.
Yeah.
But yeah, 100%.
So when you don't
Sorry, go ahead.
lend, what do you use the working capital for?
Our inventory, because we buy
Okay.
cars. Yeah, we buy the cars, we hold the cars, we refurbish them, and all of that. So this is where working capital is crucial. And as I said, any business, any team who's building a company needs to focus on their capital structure and how the capital structure is structured between equity and debt, and our ability to reach a point where we prove to our investors that we no longer need equity to expand our working capital, and equity is primarily needed to fuel growth. This is where investors became comfortable that now Sylndr can rely on debt and local funding in order to scale their balance sheet rather than use dilutive capital form to do
Yeah.
that.
Okay. Just also going back to competition, right? And you talked about some other players building just one version or like one product, right, from your ecosystem of products, right, and trying to just scale with that. It reminded me of the conversation I had with Mustafa last week, right, on Nawi, and how they started with listings, added brokerage, and other platforms to become like more encompassing, and that's what Cylinder is doing to with cars, right? And I actually I think it's a learning for founders in emerging markets, especially in Africa, that you can't just use one product to become massive or successful. So you have to go deeper into the ecosystem of what you're building and add additional services, additional products, so you don't just like depend on that one singular vertical that might not actually be big enough for you in the long run.
100%, 100%. And I think this is also a learning that I've always seen, is that people or founders or businesses, they shouldn't be like zeroing on a single slice of the value chain without building the surrounding ecosystem. Because if you focus on a single part, you lose the insight that you would get serving that customer through other sources or through other parts of the value chain that will even make your ecosystem stronger and build that network and build that connection more. So I'm 100%. I'm always a believer of building the full value chain rather than just taking apart, because the full value chain you have, the more you can build a solid ground and a very spider web like of business.
Forward looking years, what's your view on expansion for Cylinder? Are you doing just Egypt for the foreseeable future, or are you going to expand into MENA? Are you going to go just from cars to maybe other vehicles, so motorcycles or trucks and all that? So I think product expansion, let's say product or maybe asset expansion,
Vehicles.
because you're doing
Ve-
product
Vehicles,
vehicle
yes.
expansion, yeah. and also like geographical expansion.
Look, one, I think Egypt is still at the heart and the core of what we're trying to build. We've been challenged by the macroeconomic conditions of Egypt for the last 2 to 3 years. I'm quite optimistic on the coming 2 to 3 years, especially with the macroeconomic strategies and tactics that the government is trying to play. So I think again, Egypt is massive. We're one of the biggest markets in the region. We have a big opportunity that no one is tackling. We have a big market to serve. So I always believe that focusing on Egypt and focusing on our core market or homegrown market is key. Is growing beyond Egypt a possible expansion? But we always try to think of what is the best expansion strategy, because used cars or cars in general is one of the industries where local knowledge is key, and understanding the culture aspect of the market, how people look at the vehicles, how the market is traded, because every market is different. So you need to be very careful of that. And this is why if you look at players like Kavak, for example, who have been expanding in global markets, it has always been an M&A strategy. Is that we don't build that from scratch. We always look at a player to buy and grow from there. So I think definitely expanding beyond Egypt is something that we would love to look at a certain point in time. Other vehicles, 100%. Again, I think, and this is part of the infrastructure that we've built, is that when you have the infrastructure, if that infrastructure is for a vehicle or a motorcycle or a commercial car, it is the same infrastructure. So that's 100% something that we're looking to expand into. So what we can do beyond passenger vehicle, is it motorcycles, is it EVs, is it commercial vehicles? This is something that we're definitely looking to expand, hopefully in the near to medium term future.
And to your point about, geographic expansion, you mentioned Kavak. That's the Mexican guys, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, do you also see Sylndr going the exact route via acquisition? I know even, Mustafa mentioned something similar last week about Navi going into other markets via acquisitions. So is this something Sylndr will consider too?
Look, honestly, there are two aspects to look at it, Tej. Is that one, what creates more shareholders value, because that's key, is whether it would be more accretive or dilutive to investors to expand beyond Egypt and get into other markets, and what are these other markets, and what type of acquisition that we're looking at. So this is something that we need to consider. And also, what are the kind of synergies that we're going to build with that business. 100% acquisition can be a form of expansion, but we need to make sure that we're doing that through partners that we believe share our same vision, our same operating system, culture, a partner that can see our value added and what kind of value that we can bring on the table. Because only when that happens, this is where the shareholder value or the shareholder creation becomes a natural byproduct of it. So I generally think, acquisition can definitely, whether it's an acquisition, it's a merger, it's creating a conglomerate across markets. But yeah, I think definitely it can be an expansion tool.
All right. I think those are just the very, will I say, boring questions that that I had to ask, and very serious questions. And now we're coming to less serious questions. So quick fire around, just something personal, right? So I think the first one would be, what's the single biggest challenge which that the Egyptian startup ecosystem today is facing, right? Across board. So
Talent,
not just the use, yeah. So is it
use
like
card.
lack of financing or
I would say talent and capital. I think
talent? Okay.
yeah, I think we have a lot of very solid talents in Egypt. I think a lot of talents went out of Egypt into other countries. I think making sure that we're retaining talents in Egypt and all of that is crucial, especially in technology businesses where there's a lot of new jobs and roles like data science, data product growth, all of these that haven't been part of the normal, let's say, businesses in the past few years. So talent is one. And definitely the other part is liquidity, whether liquidity at an earlier stage, because, or at, let's say, at the growth stage. So series A, B, C, that part, we're still lacking significant amount of capital and investors to look at Egypt. And even by the challenge is liquidity at later stage, because Egypt is still one of the market where exit strategy and liquidity at exit is still challenging. So it needs a lot of work, whether in Egypt or, and this is why you can see also a lot of players thinking of liquidating or having an exit strategy beyond Egypt, is that from a shareholder's perspective, the end is still quite challenging. I would say these are the main challenges in Egypt.
I mean, going to Saudi or the UAE, right, for an Egyptian startup presents a better opportunity to go public or get bought. I've seen a few companies explore that, changing the HQ, but that also comes with its own problems, right? So talents are also migrating to those to those markets. So it's I don't know.
Look, I'm with you. I've seen companies doing it and turning up being a success, and I've seen others doing it and it was a fail. I think founders that look at it from a very strategic aspect and do their proper study and see how they can get into these other markets and how they can have a proper and sustainable growth are the one that makes it. But if it comes fast, it usually isn't the right way, because if you're only looking at it from an exitability standpoint, it wouldn't work, because execution is key, and understanding the market and finding your product market fit in that market, and whether the service or the product that you're doing in Egypt, whether the Saudi market needs it or the UAE market needs it, and how the competition look like and how the economics look like. So just focusing on the exit without looking at the path or the journey that will lead you to that into those markets is the tricky part. But I think 100% we've seen a couple of players in Egypt that were successful in doing that, and I think that they've been focusing on doing it with a step by step and trying to understand these markets efficiently.
Do you invest?
Personally,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm not yet at the stage where I can do investments, but
Okay.
hope.
All right. I mean, so because the question I want to ask is regarding that. So if there was like one startup, right, in Egypt or in MENA that you could invest in today, what startup would that be and why?
Look, honestly, I would, yeah, thinking out quickly, I would say that the ones that comes in mind are the Egyptians that are really disrupting the industries that they're at. So I think definitely Nawi is one, Thunder is one. If I look at those two, I think solid businesses trying to disrupt the market that they're in, trying to think of a wider ecosystem or a wider value chain to do that. These are the two that I would look at investing.
And I think lastly, or second to the last question, what's the most overrated piece of advice, startup advice you've ever heard?
Overrated. Don't raise a lot of capital. Tranche your fundraising. I honestly heard that advice when we were doing our pre-seed round. If I took that advice, Sylndr wouldn't have been live or survived till that point. I think it's always prioritize capital, prioritize how much of capital you can raise. Make sure that you have a solid ground to stand on. Don't let that fool you into spending cash right, left, and center. But it helps you build the business more structurally and not sacrificing the important things that you need to do as a business.
All right. And lastly, if you weren't building Sylndr, what else would you be doing?
Look, honestly, I always try to think of that question, because when people come and ask if someone comes in and offer to buy Sylndr, are you going
Yeah.
to sell it or not? And and then I can sit for a couple of minutes to think of what are the other businesses that I can do. I genuinely don't think that there is a more exciting challenge and business to build in Egypt, at least from my own learnings and knowledge and perspective, other than the business that we're tackling at the moment. I think we have a massive opportunity to tackle. I think the market is huge. I think we're doing something that is extremely creative and different. I genuinely don't think of what are the other business. I genuinely think that this is where we can extract more value rather than any opportunity that I have today. Maybe if I was a tech guy or SaaS kind of entrepreneur, I would be interested in more. But given my financial acumen and my background and understanding finance, economics, and these parts, and being in that kind of business, I think it's definitely where I would want to be in the couple in 10 to 15 years.
I love that answer. But yeah, thanks for that, Omar, and thanks for coming on the show.
Thank
And
you.
we've come to another end of the upside. And don't forget to like, watch, and subscribe wherever you get your podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube. And see you guys next time.